And welcome back to Chicago Bulls Insider. Today we're talking about if the Chicago Bulls are going to face a tough decision with their backcourt. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Monis Bazella slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. So make sure that you hit that like and you hit that subscribe and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it. And we're talking about the Chicago Bulls face a tough backcourt decision. And so if you have not heard about this, Matt Moore writes about this in his Substack, and he writes on Action Network. He also is a podcaster on Locked On NBA and Locked On Nuggets. But he talks about the fact that the Chicago Bulls might have a decision between Coby White and Josh Giddey. And so within that Substack, if you go into it, this is the excerpt that a lot of people are talking about. And it says that this is outside speculative, but two different East personnel figures believe that the Bulls are unlikely to retain both Josh Giddey and Coby White. If Giddey gets locked in, White could be moved. I'm skeptical of the idea because that sounds like a radical concept for the Bulls, and that doesn't sound like them. Saving money sounds like them, but not like this. And that is what Matt Moore wrote. And so if you want to go take a look, just and get some more information about this article, you can also go over to Bleacher Nation. And this was written by Elias Schuster, and he's talking about what Matt Moore had to say in his Substack. And so, look, going to this point of just do the Chicago Bulls have a tough decision? Look, I don't think that it's going to be a situation where they sign Josh Giddey and then it means that Coby White is out. I don't think that that is going to be the case. In fact, when you look at Coby White and what he did a season ago, he went and he had to settle into another role because once Zach LaVine was moved, once again, he had to move into a different role. And he knew he was going to have to take a different role once they got Josh Giddey over, because we knew that Josh Giddey was naturally going to be the point guard. We know that Coby White was playing a bit of the point guard, the season before. And so he had to slide over and become a bit more of a scorer, especially once Zach LaVine left. The defense adjusted to that and everything else. And he played well down the stretch. When you look at his numbers, 20.4 points. The season before it was at 19.1. The steals were actually up. I know that a lot of people look at his defense, but his activity on the defensive end was a little bit better at 0.9 steals compared to the 0.7. His free throws were up. He went to 90.2. He was at 83.8 the season before. And his three-point percentage, it was pretty even. I mean, it was 37.6 the season before. It was 37%. This season, he was at 45.3 from the field, 44.7 the season before. He made more free throws. He made more three-point attempts. His rebounds were slightly down from 4.5 to 3.7, and his assists were down from 5.1 to 4.5. But once again, that's because Josh Giddey came over and he was the point guard. And so, look, I don't think that they are going to move off of Josh Giddey, off of Coby White if they sign Josh Giddey. In fact, I think that really what the Bulls are going to do is, or they should do, I should say, is now that you have Coby White in this role, let's see if what happened last season at the end of the year when they went 15-5 is for real. Because I think that if it is for real, then I think AK has a bit more answers as far as a backcourt and how legit it really is. If you come into this season and you see that it is not going to work, then I think maybe you can make a decision that way. And I think that Coby White is the type of player that really, I don't think he's ever let Chicago down. I think that even in tough seasons and everything else, I think that Coby White has really figured it out. So I don't think that you're going to see a dip in production. In fact, I'm betting on Coby White to take an uptake here in his production. And I get it. He's going into a contract type of situation here where he's probably not, and not probably, he should not sign that extension because he's worth way more than what that extension is going to be. And he should hit unrestricted free agency and see what he can get. And especially, if he goes to an all-star game this season, you definitely know that the Chicago Bulls are going to have to pay him. But I think that that's a good problem, to have. And I think that you're really not worried about that if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing around these players. And so I think that Coby White and Josh Giddey, I think that they're going to figure it out this upcoming season. And especially, just off of what Josh Giddey had to say at the end of the season, when he was asked, like, straight out, like, are you going to be the player that you were at the beginning of the season? Or are you going to be that player that we saw at the end of the season? And he said, great question. And he was like, look, I think you're going to see the player that you saw at the end of the season. And he talked about how the circumstances changed. He talked about having to get just really comfortable with the team. He talked about how, he didn't want to step on anybody's toes or anything like that. And he took over in the second half. And so I think between him and Coby, they figured it out. It's now about putting the right team around these guys. And so, look, I don't think that it is going to crush the Chicago Bulls when you look at the salary cap. I think that that's something that is a bit overblown with that stuff. I don't think that that's something that the Bulls get in trouble with this backcourt. I get it. As a fan base, we're looking at this and saying, look, man, we don't want to get locked into players that just ultimately aren't worth it. But I think that these players are showing you, on a small sample size, that they really can be worth it. But is the plan in place to maximize them? That's what it's all about. It all points back to AK in his plan, because even with what happened, right, with these guys having to take on different roles and all the noise around this team and everything else, even Josh Giddey had some uptakes in his numbers. 1.2 steals, that was a career high. 7.2 assists, career high. 8.1 rebounds, that was a career high. He got to the free throw line a little bit more down the stretch. 37.8, that was a career high from three. And so that's with everything that was going on with the Chicago Bulls. And then when you look at AK and generally how he operates in the front office, if AK likes you, then generally I don't think that he moves on from you, because I think that if you look at just all the situations around players that could have been moved, we generally hold on to assets, or I should say the Chicago Bulls generally hold on to assets way longer than they should. And so what would make us think that just because Josh Giddey gets signed, all of a sudden that means that Coby White is gone? I don't think that that's happening. I do think that the Chicago Bulls are going to let things play out and see what happens. And we know that AK likes both of those players. He likes Josh Giddey and he likes Coby White, and he sees a vision for those players. And so I would not imagine him making a deal to move Coby White. And so, he's never been a person in the front office that's been aggressive in moving players and getting out in front of things before it comes down to, contract extensions and stuff like that. Like Patrick Williams, he's a player that he believed in. He gave him a contract before he even got offered anything in restricted free agency. And so what about a guy like Coby White, like a guy that has definitely produced? Like, I could see that AK is going to want to hold on to him. And I think that if the Bulls wanted to move Coby White, then they should have did that, before we reached this offseason. And now I think if you're looking to move him later on, you want to sign him and then move him, maybe you could get some more value that way, especially if he plays himself up some more this season in a role that he has for the entire season. I think that maybe the value goes up more and teams kind of jump on that. But, I just don't think that this would be the time to explore a move just because you go out and extend the player. And also, too, with AK, one last thing that I would say about him, and just really, he just reminds me of a person that wants to run it back. When you look at what is going on from a head coach standpoint, look, Coach Thibodeau just got fired from the New York Knicks, and the Knicks haven't been to the Eastern Conference Finals in 25 years. And also, too, he led the Knicks to back-to-back 50-win seasons. That hadn't happened since 94, 95. And then when you look at Billy Donovan, who is now the third longest tenured coach, he hasn't won a title And so AK clearly believes in him. And so when you talk about a guy's, or you look at players, coaches, whoever, if he likes you, I think that you're staying in that building. And so, just throwing this up here, just as far as looking at the numbers, as far as the longest tenured head coaches and things like that. And so not to jump too far off of topic, but just kind of pointing out to the fact that, look, AK is the type of guy that would run it back. And I just think that that is the situation that we're looking at here in Chicago. I don't think that, that you're going to see one of these players go because one signs. But anyway, you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking. Once again, just it's speculation that it is a possibility that Coby White might be on the move, but I don't think that this is going to happen. But you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And as we always say, go Bulls, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.